Welcome to Creatively by Estelle, a podcast for creative and performing artists. My name is Estelle Avberry, and I'm your host. Whether you're just starting or you're a pro, this show will help you feel inspired and motivated every single week along your creative journey, and will give you tactical tools and tips for fulfilling your creative goals and your God-given purpose as a creative person. You have gifts to give, so let's do this. Let's live creatively, and let's get into the episode. Hi, hello. Welcome back to the Creatively by Estelle podcast. How are we doing today? Happy Monday. I hope you are doing great. I'm so excited to get into the episode today. We're going to be talking about overcoming maybe some fear, some stress, some anxiety about just taking the first steps when it comes to pursuing your creative passion. When you're trying to learn to sing, maybe you're looking to take a dance class, maybe you're looking to take an acting class or to audition for a show, and you need some help, you need some encouragement. If you need just a few minutes of encouragement, of empowerment to help you to really get started, to pursue your creative passion with boldness and courage, this show is always the place to come to. But especially today's episode, I think you're really going to like it, and I'm excited to get into it. Before we do, though, I do want to let you guys know that I'm gathering some market research. I'm doing some informational Zoom meetings because I want to get to know you better as an aspiring performing artist, someone who's just getting started in your creative journey. I would love to have a 15-minute conversation with you on Zoom. I have just 3 more spots for you, okay, over the next 2 or 3 days. If you feel like God has given you some creative talents in singing, acting, and dance that you would love to explore, that you feel called to explore as a creative outlet, as a hobby, as a passion, or as a career, then I would love to talk to you, okay? If you are, especially if you're between the ages of in your 20s and your 30s, especially, that's kind of where I'm focusing on. Specifically, I would love to get to talk to you and just hear and ask a few questions of you for 15 minutes on Zoom, right? Whenever is convenient for you over the next couple of days. And in return, you will get a little Starbucks gift card from me to say thank you. So I really would appreciate it if you would just reach out to me. I have 3 more spots, and I am so excited to get to talk to you. Message me on Instagram at Estelle Avberry. Or you can message me on Facebook, on the Performing Artists Creatives Community Facebook group. I'll put all the stuff in the show notes below, and I'll show you where you can message me and reach out to me in the show notes below. But please reach out to me. You can also email me again at estelleavberry@gmail.com. Whatever it takes, just let me know if you would like to get on a call with me. 15 minutes again. You will get a Starbucks gift card for your time, and you will really be helping me just get to know you a little bit better. So thank you. Please reach out. Do it now. Please. Thanks. Okay, so I'm excited to talk to you guys today and get into this episode with you. All right, so let's get into today's episode. It's a really short one. I want to share with you how you can be what am I trying to say? I want to share with you some encouragement, right? To help you get started using your creative gifts with boldness and courage. So the first point I want to make, and I want to preface this by saying I'm making these points from a book that I'm really enjoying reading through called To Bless the Space Between Us by John O'Donohue. And I'll put it in the show notes below as well. Yes, it's called To Bless the Space Between Us, a Book of Blessings by John O'Donohue. And it's really good. And this part that he opens the book after the introduction with talking about beginnings. And he'll do he does a little blurb about a specific topic when it comes to just life and calling and wisdom. And then he'll go into poems that are related to this topic. And so the very beginning of the book is talking about beginnings, and it's talking about getting started. And I want to bring out 3 points from this that I think will really encourage you as you get started this week and as you are really starting your journey as a creative, even if you're like right at the beginning or you haven't started yet or you have started, but even when you do start a creative venture, you start taking your creative passion seriously as an actor, as a dancer, as a performer, you still come up against things. You still have your moments when you're like, okay, can I still do this? And you have to kind of start again, right? So I think this will really encourage you. So the first thing that I want to encourage you with is who might be missing out if you don't get started, if you don't go all in on using your creative passions and your creative giftings. And I've talked about this before. I have an episode that's literally titled Who is Missing Out on Your Creative Gifts? And I talked about that in depth. I will link that in the show notes below as well, for you to go back and listen to that if that's something that really convicts you or really touches your heart about like, wow, like there could be someone missing out if I don't really go all in on using my gifts. And I talked about how that first person is you are missing out because you don't get to have that benefit. And I want to read you a quote from this chapter, titled Beginnings, in this book that makes me think of that. He says, this is on page 1 and onto page 2 as well. He says, a beginning is ultimately an invitation to open toward the gifts and growth that are stored up for us. To refuse to begin can be an act of great self-neglect. And I love that. To refuse to begin can be an act of great self-neglect, right? Because, like I said before, like the first person who's missing out is you. You don't get to have that growth, that, empowerment, that purpose that comes with really intentionally using your gifts, just getting started. And yeah, it is self-neglect. And if you're neglecting yourself, if you're neglecting, living a purposeful life for yourself, then of course that's going to bleed over into your family, your friends, your loved ones, the people that you want to serve, right? The people that come in and out of your lives, right? And we don't want to do that, right? We want to be impactful. We want to be a blessing to people. We want to serve others. We want to love others really well. And we can't do that if we are not really starting to use our gifts and neglecting that. And so just the first point, like who might be missing out, you know? To refuse to begin can be an act of great self-neglect. Don't neglect yourself. Don't neglect what you have inside of you. Okay? So that's the first little point of encouragement. The second thing I want to say and these are all these all build on each other and they're all related to each other. The second thing is you can't grow if you don't start, right? Sometimes it's hard for us to get started because we fear imperfection. And of course, if you're just getting started in something or you're getting back to something, maybe you did choir when you were younger. And so you have had experience singing and in groups, right? And so, but you feel afraid to audition for this musical because you're like, well, I have experience singing like in a choir or in a group setting, but I don't know if I can do all this other stuff. And it's like, it's okay to be a beginner. It's okay to get started because you have to start in order to grow. And like we all know that. We know that, like that's like common sense. We all have that understanding, but it's like at the same time in the moment you're like, I don't want to take the chance. Like what if, this happens, or maybe it's not going to be worth it. And there's that fear, I think, also, like what if I don't grow? Like what if I literally don't get any better? I don't know about you, but I've had that thought too. So um yeah, that can be hard, and I don't want to minimize that, and I completely understand. But again, like you really just don't know if you don't try, and you will not grow at all if you don't start. And if you do start, maybe you will fall and quote unquote fail, and maybe you won't grow, but maybe you won't grow in that talent for, just say that as an example, in that specific skill set, which you will if you've put in your all. To some extent, you will grow. But say you don't at all, you will grow emotionally and mentally because you've tried something new, right? And you've created experiences for yourself that you haven't had before, and so you will grow in some way. Maybe not in the way that you expect it to, but you will grow, and it can only happen if you start. So let me read a little quote that relates to this particular point, okay? So it says, there can be no growth if we do not remain open and vulnerable to what is new and different. I have never seen anyone take a risk for growth that was not rewarded 1,000 times over. I love that one. That one got not just a regular underline for me in the book, but like a squiggly underline. That's like a superior underline for me when I'm notating my books, because that means it's very special. So yeah, that that part about I've never seen anyone take a risk for growth that was not rewarded 1,000 times over. Mr. John O'Donohue, love that quote right there. It's so true and it's so good. And that leads to the last point, is that you have to take a step of faith in order to see a reward. Okay. You have to take a step of faith, to see that reward. And um and it does take that vulnerability, it does take that openness, but there will be a reward. It might not be what you thought it was going to be or what you think it should be, but there will be some outcome. And even if there isn't, like, you wouldn't have known if you didn't try, right? So again, these are things we know, but I think we need to be reminded of them along our journey, or right before we start something that's a little bit new. We need these reminders, we need this encouragement, because we tend to forget. We tend to forget. And so I just hope that this encourages you today. And I will leave you with one last quote from this book to just help buttress everything that I'm saying about um, starting to use your creative gifts with boldness and with courage. Again, who might be missing out is the first thing. The second thing is you can't grow if you don't start. And then the last thing is you have to take that step of faith in order to see a reward. And yes, it takes boldness and it takes courage, and but it's worth it. It's worth it in order to see any kind of reward. And so I'll just leave you with this last quote. And this is on page 3 in the same chapter. He says, sometimes a period of preparation is necessary where the idea of the beginning can gestate and refine itself. Yet, quite often, we unnecessarily postpone and equivocate when we should simply take the risk and leap into a new beginning. I love that. Yes, we might want to wait for the perfect time, and we might want to feel like we're perfect and we have all the things that we need to get started. But at the end of the day, unless, I mean, this is obviously like being led by, are you praying? Are you talking to God? Like, through this process, is He leading you to do this or that, right? But at the end of the day, you have to take the risk and leap into a new beginning. That step of faith is so important. And that's really where you find the courage, is in taking that step. The boldness and that courage isn't necessarily a feeling. It's really kind of an action. It's taking that action, taking that risk of faith. And if you want to bring the Bible into it, in the book of Joshua, in the chapter 1, God tells Joshua, I've commanded you. Have I not commanded you to be strong and courageous? It is not a feeling. It's a command, and it's a step of faith, and it's an action to be strong and courageous. So I just want to encourage you to really take one step of boldness, of courage this week in using your creative gifts and really pursuing your passion, the gifts that God has put in your heart, to sing, to take a dance class, right? Go for that audition, go for that, get that role, whatever it is that you want to do creatively as a aspiring performing artist. I want to encourage you to do it with boldness and with courage, and to simply take that risk, just like Mr. John O'Donohue said. Okay, I hope that encourages you, and I hope you have an amazing week. If you do take a step of faith and a leap of faith, let me know about it. come to the Facebook group, the Performing Artists Creative Community. I'll put the link in the show notes as well. Come and tell us about it. Share it with me. I would love to hear about it. And yeah, I hope you have an amazing week. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for listening every week. I really appreciate it. Wow, it's so amazing. I'm so glad to get to know you. Um, yeah, let's get to know each other more. Come to the Facebook group. I'd love to chat with you. And if you do fit into like what I was talking about earlier, of like someone who knows that they have creative talents, maybe you used to do choir, you used to do theater, and you want to get back to it as a 20-year-old, a 30-year-old, you're in your 20s and 30s, I would love to talk to you just for 15 minutes on Zoom. I will give you a Starbucks gift card in return because I so would love to just talk to 3 more people. Please let me know. Thank you so much. Have an amazing week. And thank you for listening and for being here. And keep creating. I will talk to you later. Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of Creatively by Estelle. I hope you feel encouraged by today's episode as you start this week. And if you have a moment, I would love for you to just share this episode with a friend if you liked it, or with someone who you think this could be encouraging to. It would really help this show. Also, if you really loved this episode, if you wouldn't mind going to Apple Podcasts and leaving a review and rating this show, it would really help us reach more people through this show and grow our Creatively community. All right, thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you next week.